Okay, this is Ringwalk Media in association with Redline Specialist Cars, Harlem Whiskey Clan and the Glove Box Management. We are very blessed this morning. We have a two-time world champion, Paulie Malignaggi, with us. How are you, Paulie?
I'm good. Just finished up a little light shakeout workout. You know, I'm here in, where are we right now?
We're towards Liverpool.
Towards Liverpool, yeah. Well, I'm working in Bolton tonight with BKB commentating gigs. You know, I've been here all week. We announced my fight for September 6th yesterday against Tyler Goodjohn. So, you know, it's been an exciting week, and it's always fun to be amongst the UK fan base.
We've done the whole interview in about 10 seconds there.
Yeah.
Well, listen, brilliant news that you're coming back, and you know, BKB, Bare Knuckle Boxing. It's all exciting, mate.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, I've been working out. You know, you just saw me, you know, shaking out a little bit. I feel smooth.
Yeah.
I feel with a good flow. I've been back at it for a few months already because I wanted to, at this age, first make sure that I could get my weight down and condition my body for a training camp before actually starting a training camp. You know, so you know, it wasn't like when you're younger you can just, you know, not that it was the right thing to do, but you can kind of abuse your body a little bit between fights and you know, have a bit of a good time between fights, and then you go back into camp, and you know, you go back at it, and your body springs back into action. I knew it had been years. I knew I was older, so I said, and I knew how injury prone I was at the end of my boxing career already. So I know as I was getting older, I was becoming more injury prone. So I said, I can't just go from a big layoff into a training camp if I do this.
Yeah.
So I've got to let me see how I feel, you know, losing some weight, getting my conditioning going, and just getting into a flow a little bit. And that's what I've been doing the last few months. That's why, you know, now my training camp has begun. I've already got a pretty good flow going, and I feel pretty good, you know.
Well, we just seen you do a bit of a workout this morning. It's like you haven't even been away. You know, you're looking really sharp. And
yeah, you know, and that's the thing. That, you know, people ask me, you know, why bare knuckle and why not, you know, pro boxing? Well, the reason is because as sharp as I can be, that doesn't last me 10 rounds anymore, you know.
Yeah.
My legs kind of go after, you know, at a certain point. I think that's the drawback of getting older. It's not so much that you lose the ability to fight. It's the ability one of the first things that goes is your endurance, you know, and your ability to, you know, keep that style, keep that rhythm for a longer period of time. And then little by little, everything else goes. So I'm at the point in time where I think I still have my rhythm. I was always a pretty good athlete in my life, you know. I still have a pretty good rhythm, but my legs start to suffer when it gets to the later part of the fight, you know what I mean? So in 5 rounds, there's never a late part of the fight. You know, in 5 rounds, it's always early.
It's all
right?
action,
It's all action, yeah. And you know, like I said, I go back to my Sam Egginton fight where I started the fight pretty well, but at a certain point in the fight, it was like heavy, it was fatiguing. Even the last couple of fights in my career before that, you know, Tito Bracero, Antonio Moscatello, they were 12-rounder and 10-rounder as well, and fought well, but you know, I had to suffer through those late part of the fight, you know, and so I realized at that point in my life where I say I'm getting in shape, but my legs just aren't the same anymore, you know, at a certain point in the fight. Early on in the fight, still got it. And you know what? Because I feel like I did my due diligence to prepare my body for a training camp, I feel like, you know, for 5-6 rounds, I can still be very sharp, still be active, put my mind back into an amateur boxing mindset, which is get your hands off, you know, be active. Obviously, with bare knuckle, you've got to be more selective, but right now I'm just working on being smooth in the meantime. And in that regard, I think my smoothness is coming out and the athleticism is starting to show.
One thing I like, and I've heard you mention this in other interviews, is that you've been doing some commentary with BKB and you're coming back with them as well to perhaps help their brand as well as them helping you.
I saw what, you know, and honestly, my BKFC experience was fine. You know, it was a good experience, with the exception of what I think was a bad decision and what I think most boxing fans would think is a bad decision if they saw the fight. I think the entire experience there was fine, you know. But I also felt like I did a lot for BKFC's growing brand at the time. At the time, they were a very obscure company, and I felt like the promotion with me and Lobo really helped them get to the next level. It really catapulted them to another level. And that was good for them, you know. It was they've done well. But afterwards, it was BKB that hired me as a commentator, you know. I offered myself to BKFC. I thought their commentating team was atrocious. As a matter of fact, I broke my hand in the BKFC fight, and never once on that whole broadcast do you hear them mention that I'm not throwing on my right hand for 3 rounds. It's not like I wasn't throwing it for 1 round. I did not throw a right hand for the majority of the fight because I broke it in round 2. And never once do you hear any of the commentators even make note of the fact that I'm not using a right hand. So I offered myself. I said, hey, listen, man, I think you probably use a good analyst. You know,
someone with a good boxing brain.
Yeah, you know, you might want to, you know, if I'm here, you know, because I was at that point in my life, I had moved on from Showtime for various reasons that we won't get into. I think everybody knows the story, but But yeah, they didn't hire me, and no harm done. Like I said, my experience was still fine. But BKB hired me, which at the time was not BKB. BKB at the time was in England, but BYB was in the United States. It was before they had the merger. And BYB hired me, and they were, again, a very new company, small brand, and I started doing commentating with them, and they've since grown a lot. And now they're starting to come into TV contracts. You know, they're with TalkSport in the UK, a big platform. In the US, they've just signed a deal with Vice TV. They've also signed a deal with the Latino brand Telemundo in the US as well.
Yeah, they're big,
and that's going to be on Telemundo's Fast channel as well. So they're going to have a Spanish and English in the US as well. So BKB is growing since the merger, especially. It's growing, and they're making an effort to really push this. So I said to myself, if I do this, right now is the time where BKB could start to use that launch position. So I want to do it. I'm gonna do it with BKB for the other reasons as well, because bare knuckle is more feasible for me at this point in my life. But also, I want an opponent that is respectable and not just go into a title fight. I could just go into a title fight like that Conor McGregor, who basically all of a sudden is teasing he's going to fight when I'm fighting. Everything I do, this guy starts teasing. If you've noticed his social platform, all of a sudden he's teasing he's going to box when I've just announced this. All of a sudden I'm going to box, all of a sudden he's going to box. Obviously he's just a tease. He never does anything. He's got no balls, like I've always said. And then he's not going to fight. He's not going to fight now either. He's just going to do a couple of shadow boxing, a couple of mitts on the beach, and he's not going to do shit. But regardless, I didn't want to be that guy where I start teasing fighting for a championship without earning it, because I sit ringside, as does Conor, by the way. I sit ringside at these fights, and I see how hard these guys work, and I see how much it means to them to work their way up the ladder and work their way up the rankings. So I said, I need an opponent that's going to be respectable, and also has a position in the sport, somebody maybe who's been a pioneer in the sport, who's done a lot for this brand and this sport in general, and someone who has the resume, And that's why Tyler Goodjohn came along. Tyler Goodjohn, when his name was brought up, he ticked all the boxes. He's a guy who's been a BKB world champion. Before they were merged with BYB. He was a champion. He's a former British level boxer, pro boxer. Yep. He's got a big platform as far as his promotability. He's a bit of a wild man. A bit of maybe even more than I was. I had a wild man reputation, but I think mine pales in comparison to Tyler's wild man reputation in his past. And he's promotable. He knows how to speak and whatnot. So I think you got to tick all the boxes, and that's important if you're going to create a scenario where this is going to get a push. If you remember with BKFC, me and Lobov, it got a big push because of the McGregor beef and everything else, and it got a big push. People were very interested. People were keenly interested. With me and Goodjohn, obviously, there isn't that friction like there was for me and Lobov, but what there is you have a guy with a big resume in this sport. You have myself coming from a big resume in boxing. Respectability, but also a curiosity is born, because like I said, he's got personality, resume, fighting ability. I've got personality, resume, fighting ability. So it creates there. Because one thing I got to tell you, and I was talking on TalkSport the other day, in this sport, everybody just calls you out. It's not like in boxing. In boxing, at championship level, I'm at a high level. I don't have the guy in the club fighting in the Hilton Hotel in the ballroom calling me out, because he knows he's not at that level yet. He knows it's not worth it for him to call me out. He's never going to get the fight. But in bare knuckle, you've got the Uber driver calling you out. You've got the high-level fighter, the champion, calling you out. You've got everybody calling you out. In bare knuckle, there's no hierarchy. These guys are actually so stupid, that they don't even understand the hierarchy there. So I've been called out by basically everybody at this point. But like I said, it needed to be understood that there's a reason a guy like Goodjohn got picked, and it's not an easy fight. Which is why I feel like if I can beat a guy like Goodjohn, then it'll earn me an opportunity for a rifle championship fight.
Well, that was my next question, is what are your aspirations in bare knuckle? Where do you want to get to?
Well, I think, that's the thing, you don't come back just for one fight, you know what I mean? You just, either you have a vision or you don't do it. You do it for one fight, and then it becomes obvious, like you're just looking to grab an extra check, Do you have aspirations to be a champion? Do you feel like you can be a champion? Again, that's another reason why it's bare knuckle and it's not boxing. I don't think I can be a world champion in boxing anymore. Doing 10, 12 rounds is difficult. At the highest level of boxing, I don't think I can compete anymore, Bare knuckle, shorter fights, I feel like I can compete with anybody, And so the aspirations can be of becoming a world champion, So, that aspiration is there, that vision is there, but also I fought in professional boxing and won world championships at 140 and 147 pounds. So in bare knuckle, being at 154 pounds, I could, add a third weight class in a different sport. It would be a nice resume filler if I could get there. I know it's not easy. I know these fights are tough. I know there's some good fighters, and I think that having that vision and will make me, have my nose to the ground, so to speak, and want to go through that difficult situation of getting through these contenders and getting to a title fight.
Well, we've been with you for a couple of days and seen what you've been going through, and you really are taking it very, very seriously and very professionally. And it's nice to see. It's testament to yourself as a pro that you're giving the respect to the guys you're going to go in the ring with.
Yeah.
And I really, really hope this works. It's going to be entertaining.
I took things seriously in my boxing career as well. It's just like I said, between fights, I probably could have been more mature about things, more responsible about things. I wasn't Ricky Hatton between fights. Don't get me wrong, but I was also not, wasn't with Bernal Hopkins either. So, and that was a learning experience for me as well. So I feel like I've taken a more mature approach to this part of my career than I did them before, because I wouldn't have already been dieting as strictly as I have been, or have timing my workouts, timing my meals as specifically as I have been so early. Before I would have just been, even up until a week before camp, I would have been like, well, I'm leaving for camp. I might as well go, run, go crazy for the last week, because hey, I'm going for camp next week. Instead of, let me get ready for camp. Let me start, get myself in shape already before camp so that I can get to camp in shape. I wasn't like that before. Before I was like, if I knew I was going to camp next week, I was gonna destroy myself the week before. I had the last fun, because I knew that for the next 2-3 months I wasn't gonna have fun. This time I've been really, really specific, really, really strict, even before camp started, because I wanted to really give myself the best opportunity. So I feel in that way I've actually taken a more mature approach. Even if I may not, be in my physical prime, I've taken a more mature approach to this. So whatever I have, I'm going to get the best of that ability. Whatever I have left, I'm going to get the best of that ability. And I feel like, I've got enough left, especially in a 5-round fight.
Well, we can't wait for this, mate. It's going to be such a journey.
Yeah.
I can't let you go without speaking to you about boxing, because that's what we all know you for at the moment. Sure, that's going to change.
Yeah.
You fought some absolute greats. Danny Garcia. You've been in with so many people. Khan. You could reel them off, and it's been so nice to watch you go through that process as a professional, become 2-time world champion, which was very well deserved. In that whole process, which were the kind of the best fights? Were the ones that like the magic fights?
I'll say this, and not only did I fight all these guys, I fought all these guys in their prime.
You did.
Those are things that a lot of your favorite fighters don't do. A lot of your favorite fighters are resume fillers, but they fight guys that are nice, look nice in the resume 5-10 years from now. But if you actually look at when they fought them, they didn't fight them in their prime. And you know who I'm talking about. A lot of the top superstars are manufactured, not genuinely created, and they're manufactured by having them fight stars that are out of their prime or just past their prime, and even when they take a big risk, it's still not perfectly at the opponent's prime.
Yeah.
I fought most of the guys I fought at their very best, at their very prime. So, whether I won or whether I lost, first of all, I'll say this: I never lost a fight where I was favored in. Most of your fighters eventually get beat in fights that they're favored in. I wasn't even favored in the Egginton fight. By the time I got to the Egginton fight, Sam Egginton was favored to beat me too. You know what I mean? So I've actually never lost a fight where I was favored to win, and then got upset. And I've also won a handful of fights where I was expected to lose. I was an underdog and I won. So I took on a lot of fights where I was an underdog. I actually one time looked back on my professional boxing career, and it was 44 fights, and 11 of them I entered the ring as an underdog on the odds-on underdog. That's more than most fighters. More than most fighters. 25% of my career I entered the ring as the odds-on underdog, and I won 3 of those fights as an underdog, and I lost 8 of them. All 8 of my fights that I lost, I was not the favorite, And every fight I was favored in, I won. so you didn't lose any money on me if you bet me as a favorite, and then sometimes you won money on me if you bet me as an underdog. But having said that, what the experience is, I have to answer your question. I think there's probably not one particular experience. You dream of winning world championships. I got to win 2 of them. Even I was telling you off camera, the WBA changed the rule on their super title. I won by today's standards. If I would have won my WBA title the same way I won it back then, if I would have won it today in the exact same way today, I would have had the super title. Back then, the super title only showed up in certain circumstances in every weight class. So most weight classes did not have a super title, because you were only super champion at that time if you had 5 defenses or if you unified with another belt. Otherwise, there was no super champion in the weight class. The world champion was the world champion.
Yeah.
Now, today, the world champion is a super champion, and then the regular champion is, I don't know, some B belt they just created for no reason, you know? So I kind of get screwed in hindsight because I don't show up as a super champion, but by today's standards, I would have been a super champion. But anyway, having said that, the reason I bring that up is because probably the Zinchenko fight was a pleasant surprise. You know, it was a pleasant world championship that I won that I didn't expect. The first world championship is the most special because it's the first one. But it was also sort of a weight off my shoulder because I always expected a world championship out of myself. Ever since I stepped in the gym for the first day, you know, I was always expecting a world champion, and I guess everybody expects that. So I don't know, but from the first day I walked in the gym, I had a lot of goals. I wanted short-term goals to win amateur tournaments and Golden Gloves championships and all this other stuff as an amateur, to becoming a world champion later on, you know. And I had all these goals in my mind and all these dreams and aspirations. And so to win the first championship, it was the most special one, but it was also, you know, something that you expect as well, you know, at least by my standards that I had. The second one was unexpected. It was special. It was under difficult circumstances, and it was an impressive and interesting journey. I had to have to go to where now is a war-torn country, you know, and win a championship there. And the stadium that I fought in was where Shakhtar Donetsk was playing, and it was a brand new state-of-the-art stadium that's now since been missiled and doesn't even exist anymore, you know.
Yeah, that's mad, isn't it?
And even the hotel I stayed at, 5-star state-of-the-art hotel, gone, missiled as well, you know. So it really tells you the fragility of life in general. But, you know, for me to have gone through all that whole experience was pretty cool. And then, you know what, I'll tell you what, even fights that I lost, you know, like, you know, the Hatton experience, you know, a year of being around the British fans, you know, that was entertaining.
And
to
be fair, they loved you.
And to be fair, honestly, the banter was all in good fun. You know what I mean? It was, and it wasn't just a Hatton fight. It was a Hatton experience, I call it, because we signed the fight, you know, early in the year, and then we just, you know, we had a fight where we both fought on the same show at Etihad, you know, and it wasn't called Etihad then, but it was at Etihad, and I remember being in Manchester. One thing I remember being in Manchester that week, it was the week Manchester United and Chelsea played in the Champions League final as well. So, and I was in Manchester that week fighting, and at that time that was when the championship game was in a Wednesday, not a Saturday. Now it's on a Saturday. So, thankfully, it wasn't on a Saturday because we were fighting on Saturday. But it was Wednesday night. I watched the Champions League final in the bar in Manchester. So, you know, me and my friends, it was a great experience because, you know, it's in Manchester. And then they went on penalty kick shootout. I remember they beat Chelsea. And then what happens? You know, then we have the fight, the hair fight, and all that other stuff. But like I said, just the Hatton experience, the fan base, the Ricky himself is class, and still, I think probably the funniest guy genuinely I've ever met in boxing. You know, that guy could do stand-up comedy. I think he does do stand-up comedy, right?
He does some dinner shows.
Rick is funny, man. Rick is funny, and he'll genuinely have you laughing. He's not the kind of guy where, like, you know, some people, they have a position, and so you just laugh because they have a position and you want to impress them. Ricky will generally have you pissing your pants, you know. So again, the Hatton experience is something that I also cherish, you know. And, you know, like I said, I probably can't name them all in one conversation, you know, because things just randomly pop into my mind as far as experiences are concerned. I had a long career, but it was an interesting ride. I'll say that. I guess it's still going.
Can you believe it's 20 years ago? I think last month that Ricky won his first world title against Costa Tszyu.
Yeah. That's
time
how fast
flies.
it goes. That's how fast it goes, mate. I know. That's crazy. I remember he won it, and then I remember Mayweather Gotti was like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
I remember being at Mayweather Gotti a couple weeks after that, you know, and then everybody was still buzzing about Ricky Hatton's win over Costa Tszyu. It was transcendent, even across the pond.
Well, listen, 6th of September, right? That's when you're
6th
doing
of September
BKB.
in Bristol, England. Back with the Brits, guys.
And can people come and get tickets? Can they come along and see?
Yeah. The tickets are going to be available soon. You know, it's BKB. You know, so I mean, I don't know exactly where you get BKB tickets from, but you know, you can follow the BKB.
Instagram.
Yeah, you can follow the BKB Instagram page, and I'm sure there's plenty of details. They've already posted about my fight with Tyler Goodjohn. I think it's something that people are going to look forward to. I think it's going to be a great card, and I think there's going to be some really good fights on that whole show. I think it's a real blockbuster BKB show, and I think it's a show that they're really going to push the brand out more. You're going to see some really top level fights on that show. It's not just me and Tyler that you're going to be impressed with. I think there's some other very good fighters on that show.
And you're off tonight to do some commentary as well.
BKB, as well. We got it. We're here in. We're going to be in Bolton. I don't know where we are now. Again, where are we in?
Near Liverpool.
We're near Liverpool. We're going to be in Bolton tonight for BKB. And tonight, there's also in Manchester. There's down the street. You got Catterall, right?
Yeah.
Catterall and Harlem Eubank.
Jack Catterall and Eubank, and then of course Black Flash have got a show over in Bowlers as well, which is where we're going.
A lot of fighting every week in England, man. England is the home of boxing. I always tell people, best fan base in the world.
Well, listen, Paulie, we wish you the best of luck with your journey in BKB. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, as always. And we'll come down and see you on the 6th.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, mate.